Hello guys, hope everyone's doing well. So you had some of the lectures on Aristotle from Professor Fox. So I wanted to try to give you a short lecture on Epicurus, so that way you had some material to go off of with your readings. So I already, I think I added a short paragraph on Epicurus before, but just to kind of elaborate his context. Epicurus is from the island of Samos, and he's broadly an ancient Greek philosopher. One of the important things to consider here, though, is the ancient Greek world is a little bit more than just Athens. You can kind of almost think of Athens kind of like maybe like Paris or something. It's just a place where all the people are centralizing, but there's a lot going on in other places as well. And so while he does go and studies in Athens for a bit, Epicurus also will end up studying in what would be today modern-day Turkey, so it's part of the greater Greek and cultural and linguistic world, but really kind of far from Greece. And that's where he would study with some philosophers who were broadly part of the Democritean tradition, coming out of the ancient Greek philosopher Democritus. And that'll be getting into Epicurus' metaphysics, so I'll get into that in a bit. But basically he'll end up coming back to Athens, and he'll start a place called the Garden, which was his kind of philosophical school outside of Athens. And the Garden is it's a little bit on the outskirts, and it would be an interesting place if you were to go there. You would be, because you'd be a bit intrigued, because you're going to go there and it'll be just some guys drinking water, and they'll be eating some sparse bread and maybe a little bit of cheese for an extravagance. And this will contradict a major position that is seen with Epicurus, and that is that he is considered a hedonist. And so what kind of hedonist is just drinking water and having some bread and having some intellectual discussions, but there's the crazy parties and the other bits of craziness that you would normally associate with hedonism, just like going all out with pleasure and extremes. And this is something I kind of want to explain here. So to begin with, we're going to go to Epicurus' ethics. Now, Epicurus' ethics kind of form the baseline for his philosophy, and the reason he's called a hedonist is that he sees pleasure as the highest good. Now, if you'll remember from our discussions with Aristotle, there was a lot of understanding, a lot of questions around how we need to orient our life. Like, what is the good life, and what is the good life oriented for? And one of the terms we were bringing up was happiness, or in the Greek, eudaimonia is the term in English, or eudaimonia in Greek, and that is the good life, the fulfilled life. And there was some ambiguity and some discussion about exactly what this good life is, this highest good in itself that we're trying to be oriented for in Aristotle. There's a lot less ambiguity in Epicurus. Epicurus, the highest good is pleasure, and that's it. That's the highest good. That's what the life is oriented towards, and we can build the whole rest of his ethics around that point. Pleasure for Epicurus is the good in itself, and we just need to work towards pleasure. Now, while at first it sounds fairly simple, it does seem to contradict that picture I was just painting you of the hedonist that's just only drinking water and eating bread. And that's because the idea of his hedonism is different from another kind of hedonism. So he's a hedonist insofar as pleasure is the highest good, but what exactly pleasure is for him is a little bit more complicated than, let's say, his contemporaries, the Kiraniacs or the Koranikoi. And I want to bring this kind of contrast with them out, because they are another group of hedonists living around the same time in ancient Greece, or in the ancient Greek world. And one of the things I want to be training you guys for in this course is to be able to kind of spot these differences, to be able to spot the nuances and differences between different thinkers. Because I'm very happy, and I really want to encourage you to be able to try to bring in as many similarities and as many synchronicities as you kind of see between different ideas. At the same time, I want you to also be able to point out the differences, to be able to point out the ways in which ideas are distinct, and in ways in which the ideals may be contrasting here. So between Mencius and Aristotle, and Montse and Aristotle, and the same way between Epicurus and Aristotle, and Epicurus and the Kiraniacs. And I think that's going to be an important point. So being able to kind of spot those ways in which the ideas diverge. And so for them, the Kiraniacs, pleasure is also the highest good. They're also hedonists, but for them it's the immediate pleasure. It's what you normally think of as a hedonist. Whatever feels good at that moment you need to do. And you can't even plan for the long term because the whole goal for them is just whatever feels good at the exact moment. And for Epicurus, he thinks that philosophy is totally bunk. It makes no sense. Because he's like, some pleasures, like getting really drunk or eating a bunch of candy on Halloween, they're really good in the immediates. But the next day, with your reason that those pleasures are really not going to be good anymore. When you have the hangover or the stomach ache, had a hangover from drinking too much or the stomach ache from eating too much candy, that's not really pleasurable anymore. So why would you indulge in just the immediate pleasure when you're going to end up suffering some pain? So a big part of Epicurus' hedonism, or the Epicurean hedonism, is being able to also utilize reason to make the world as unharmful and as easy to live in as possible. So his pleasure is truly maximizing pleasure by minimizing pain, and which is a very different kind of conception than the kind of like naive hedonism, let's say, of others. So for him, the end goal is almost this kind of state of contentment. And I think contentment's a good word here because it's not really about trying to be as jumped up and as the most extreme pleasure you can feel. It's actually just about being kind of content with what you have and being in the moments in which you can kind of minimize suffering here. So that's why he wants to focus on the water and the bread and the little bit of cheese for extravagance, because these are the things that while they're a little bit, while they're important for sustaining life, they don't increase the pleasure too much to have a negative effect. And so for Epicurus' philosophy, he